Okay, this is our last one.
Okay.
I could go
Number
on.
5.
But the last one is probably the easiest sign. All the A players leave. All the A players leave.
Yeah.
All your top talent, people that you really admire and work with and really value their work, they're like, I'm out of here. I'll go somewhere else. I'll even take a pay cut to go somewhere else. And they leave not necessarily for bigger and better things. They may be leaving just for lateral moves, but they're leaving. So when you start to look around, let's say you can't quite diagnose what's going on, but you can tell something's kind of off. Something's not good. You don't feel good going to work. And I have some clients that will tell me when I go into work, so this is kind of a good sign for all this. So maybe you're trying to put language around it. You know you're probably got a toxic environment, either for everybody or specifically for you and your personality. If you begin to not only dread going to work, but you physically are reacting to the workplace. This is the Brandon Smith Show, and of course, I'm your host, Brandon Smith, and the entire purpose of the show is one singular thing, and that is to help you live a life that much more free from dysfunction. Whitney, it has been so long since I've had you on the show.
It's a pleasure and an honor to be accepted back.
I could see you weren't even sure what to say. You were so excited to be back.
I figure I better be on my best behavior.
Well, you have an excuse today if you don't want to be on your best behavior.
You
want to know why?
Because we're talking about being toxic.
We are. So our topic today, this is going to be one in a series of different kinds of toxic workplaces. So this is one of our leadership therapy podcasts and conversations. And we're going to be talking about specifically, very specific, the 5 signs, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, the 5 signs your company culture is toxic. Okay, 5 signs your company culture is toxic. Now, when I say company, I wanted to kind of clarify. I'm talking about big companies. So I'm not talking about startups. I'm talking about big companies. So you work for a big company. It could be really big, would be anything over $3 billion in revenue, but we're talking big companies. Okay, so what's the 5 signs that your company culture is toxic? That's gonna be our conversation today. Are you ready?
I think so.
Okay.
Number 1.
Okay, here we go. Politics trump performance. Politics trump performance. What does that mean to you when you hear that?
The first thing that came to my mind is your best friend in the office gets promoted over someone necessarily who might have the best numbers, whatever the tracking metrics are.
Totally. It can take so many forms. So in big companies, one of the natural things that happen, it's not necessarily good, one could argue, is that politics come into play, particularly if you're over $3 billion in revenue. My experience has been companies morph from being companies to governments. So you end up with lots of corporate politicians that walk around. No one really knows what she does or what he does. They've got a big title, big office, kind of go around kissing baby, shaking hands, but they make all the decisions. And if you get on their good side, good things happen. You get on their bad side, bad things happen, regardless of your performance. So this one is a tricky one because we all want to be rewarded for the work we do. We all want to feel like our work is appreciated and it's noticed, but politics can come into play and kind of overrule that. So that can be favoritism, like what we just talked about there. That was a great example. It can also be other things. In some companies, tenure matters more than performance. Like, oh, I'm sorry. I know you did great last year, but she's been here longer. So she gets it instead of you. And so that can be another form of politics where you have tenure play into it. And there are some companies, they're not as common as they used to, but some companies still have a lot of long tenured employees and have cultures of long tenured employees where you stay 30 years. And when those, sometimes that's healthy, but when it's not healthy, it's because that's valued over performance.
Yeah.
And so high performers, then what do you think they do in that situation?
They keep high performing.
Well, they might.
And then they leave.
But then they bolt. That's exactly right. They go, I'm out of here. I'm going somewhere else. And so that's definitely a bad one.
Yeah. So is this where maybe silos can come into play, right? You got your little groups
nicely
and pockets.
played, Whitney.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
Wow, I hear Isaac laughing. That just killed the confidence.
Why? He was proud
That
of
was
you.
so good. And then he laughed.
Absolutely. That's another element too. So you end up with silos.
Yeah.
You end up with, well, this is going to be our little kind of fiefdom, and I don't want to. We're not going to play well with the others, so we're going to kind of protect our turf. And then you end up with misalignment. And I had one organization I worked with, and the two leaders above those two kind of divisions did not like each other, and so they communicated all the way down in their groups and teams. Don't talk to people over there.
Wow.
But those people need to talk to each other to get stuff done. So they would set up like secret rendezvous meetings, so they could talk about work.
Wow.
So they could get stuff done, because they had to do it behind the back of the leaders because of politics.
Wow.
Yeah. So number one is politics.
Okay.
Now, again, the caveat is all big companies have politics, but when it becomes toxic is when politics is so severe that it is valued over performance, and decisions are made based on politics versus performance in almost every case. Definitely toxic.
Wow.
You ready for number two?
I'm ready for
I'm
number 2.
ready for number two.
Okay.
Okay, so now remember I said the first one is politics trumps performance.
Yes.
Okay. And now I'm gonna do a little turn here. Okay, like a little swivel.
Okay.
You're gonna have to follow me.
Okay.
Performance trumps values.
Okay.
What do you think that means?
To me, that means your numbers are really great, but maybe nobody likes you because you're kind of mean.
Yeah, totally like dead bodies in the wake.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, look at Whitney over there. She killed it last month, and her numbers are fantastic. And she made 3 people cry, and 2 people quit,
Yeah.
and nobody wants to work with her.
Right.
But we say here that we are all about team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? So then we have this issue where performance trumps values or
Yeah.
culture. And so everything that we say we are, we're like, oh, we'll excuse it because, gosh, he's a really high performer, or she's a really high performer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that one person infects the entire culture and
Right.
makes it toxic.
Right.
And it makes you as an employee say, well, what really is valued around here? What really does matter?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it feels icky, not good. Performance trumps values.
Which kind of feeds the politics.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
They all start to kind of bleed together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in big companies, why this can be an issue is there can be a lot, particularly today, a lot of pressure for short-term results, because most big companies are going to be publicly traded, which means there's pressure for quarterly results.
Right. Right.
And most big companies today are undergoing a lot of change initiatives.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, you don't care if there's a lot of dead bodies in the wake, just hit the numbers you got to hit, because
Right.
as a senior leader, reporting out to Wall Street or the board, I got to look good. So you better just do it. Do whatever you got to do
Yeah.
to get it done.
Wow.
So I was talking to someone a few weeks ago, and he was talking about an organization he had gone into, and they hired him for this. They were like, okay, we want you to go in and be a change agent. We're moving too slow around here. He said, okay, so can I break a few plates? They said, yeah, you can absolutely break a few plates.
Yeah.
He said, okay. Pause for a minute. He said, can I drive a Mack truck through the China shop? They were like, well, hold on now. I'm not quite sure exactly that's what we want. So how much change can I really do?
Yeah. Yeah.
But in this case, this is where it really doesn't matter what you break as long as you get the results.
Wow.
So that's
It's a nice analogy. Very clear.
that's number 2.
Wow. All right. Number 3.
Okay, number 3. So this one is a problem I see in a ton of companies today.
Okay.
Ton of companies. And that is leaders' actions don't match their words.
Well, fancy that.
Fancy that.
I've seen it too.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they'll say, hey, this is what we're going to do.
Uh-huh.
But then they don't do it.
Yeah.
Or they keep changing direction. There's a lot of that. So either they don't walk the talk, and then that feels like there's a lack of integrity there, or they're just constantly changing direction.
Yeah.
Which is a very big kind of no-no. So this kind of ties in this idea of inconsistency, and I think I've shared this piece of research on some earlier shows, but it fits into this really well. A group of researchers a few years ago studied what's the worst kind of boss to work for. I think you and I have talked about this.
I was going to ask, but you went there.
I think we've talked about it.
Yeah,
But it fits into this really well. So let's see if you can remember the answer. So they said, what's the worst kind of boss to work for? And so then they came back with the findings. What would you have thought they would have come up with? Any thoughts? Worst kind of boss?
Well, I already know the answer.
Oh, you remember it?
Probably most people would say like whatever they would classify as mean.
Yeah, so
it's probably what you would think.
I would have thought
first.
that. I totally would have thought the angry, abusive boss, like the pounding the table.
Yeah.
When I ask groups this question, they say micromanager. Sure, that's horrible.
Right.
No one wants to work with a micromanager, but that's not number one. The ghosting boss, like I can't find them.
Right.
Like they're gone. They're unresponsive. Also not number one. The boss takes all the credit for everything. The narcissistic boss, not number one. Number one is
inconsistent. Boss.
Yes, because all those other ones you can manage to.
Yeah.
They're horrible that they're a narcissist, but you know they're a narcissist. You could play to that.
Right.
You're horrible that they're a micromanager, but you know they're going to be a micromanager. So you know you just better give them a lot of detail. You can manage to all that, but you can't manage to inconsistent.
Right.
Inconsistent creates a tremendous amount of anxiety in the system. So you're sitting out in the parking lot getting ready to go into, your building to work, and you're grabbing the steering wheel, and you don't know. I could get fired today, or I could get a raise today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Either of those things are equally possible.
Mm-hmm.
So this number 3 here really relates to that. So when we're really inconsistent on our what we say we're going to do and then what we do, that causes issues. So consistency matters. So consistency matters in terms of communicating regularly. It matters in terms of setting a vision and sticking to it. It also matters that, kind of what you say the values are, you stick to it. So any of those forms, when those get violated at the leadership level, it trickles all the way down, creates a toxic culture. Because it just feeds insecurity and anxiety.
Sure.
Which is not good.
Just one person.
Just one person. Or peoples.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Can create that. So, all right, so just to recap so far, we've talked about politics trumping performance. We talked about performance trumping values. And then we talked about leaders' actions don't match their words. Okay?
Okay.
You ready for number 4?
Ready.
Number 4 sign that your company culture is toxic. Everything is urgent all the time.
Well, fancy that too.
Everything is urgent all the time. Now, if you're listening to this, you're probably going, this is kind of like when you do research on medical conditions, like on Google.
Or WebMD.
And
you're going to die within
and inevitably
the next 5 minutes.
you're like, I've got that,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
you're like, I've got that, and I've got that, and I've got that. I'll tell you a funny story about that in a minute.
Okay.
Well, everyone listening to this right now is probably saying, I've got that. Like, I've got urgency all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a difference between having urgency all the time, because most of our workplaces have that,
yes,
versus extreme urgency all the time. So earlier in this segment, I mentioned if you're a big company, publicly traded, you probably got a lot of change initiatives. Okay, you really should not be running more than 3 urgent change initiatives at a time. Okay, but I have seen so many cases where I had a leader that I heard speak earlier this year, and the leader announced to his group, here are our 12 initiatives that are urgent, that must be done. We're behind on all of them. I mean, they're brand new. We just started them. It's not like they're lingering and haven't been accomplished. No, we just started them, but we're already behind. We got to get them all done. And someone raised their hand in the group and they said, well, okay, well, what's the priority on these? He looked at me and said, priority? They're all urgent. Get them all done now. Why would that be a bad thing? What do you think that makes you feel?
Well,
if you were told that, I was like, Whitney, I got 12 things to be done all right now.
It does feel like you're setting your team up for failure, because they just can't handle all that at once.
Yeah. Creates, again, that urgent all the time will lead to anxiety.
Yeah.
And then that just bleeds into the system. And it also reduces focus. So you're constantly in a state of anxious. You're waking up in the middle of the night thinking about work. You're not really sure what to focus on. And really not getting a whole lot done either. Big companies are really super guilty of this. And the toxicity where that's coming from is insecurity at the senior levels. Senior leadership is scared and insecure because of all the market pressure, and they're not able to take a stand. So they're just pushing it all down on everybody else.
Wow.
Very common in publicly traded companies, big ones. And if it's extreme, it's going to make it toxic. So here was the story I was going to tell you.
Okay.
So when I was getting my counseling degree, one of the classes I took was a diagnosis class. Okay, so every day we would go in the class. This was a graduate class, and we would go in and we would see, this was old school VHS tapes. So the professor would put in VHS tape.
I know what those are.
Okay, but not everyone listening knows. Hopefully they do, but they might not.
Yeah,
so
they don't make them anymore.
Put in the VHS tape, and then we would watch some kind of individual dealing with a diagnosis or dealing with a mental illness, and we'd have to diagnose it.
Okay.
So we'd watch it, and then she'd pause the tape, and she'd say, "What do you think's going on here?" And we'd say, "It's bipolar disorder, or it's manic depressive, which is bipolar disorder, or it's schizophrenia, or paranoid schizophrenia, which are two different things. Multiple personality disorders, which is not schizophrenia, by the way." And so there was a guy in our class, and every week he would raise his hand, and he'd say, and she'd say yes. He'd say, "I've got that." Every week. So by the whole semester, he basically had, according to him, everything in the book.
Wow.
Yeah. He usually has to walk out of class 3 times to smoke a cigarette during the class, by the way.
Oh, okay. Wait. Do we have time, real quick? I want to take you back to this presentation you were sitting in. Unfortunately, I should probably add. Did you
where the boss said
the 12 initiatives?
Yeah.
Did you have the opportunity to speak with him after
No.
that? No.
No, it was not. I was not in a coaching relationship with him.
Interesting.
So, but you could see.
Did you turn in an anonymous tip?
And he was a very senior leader, so C-level leader. And then his direct reports were all like VP level, director level. I mean, these were senior people.
Yeah.
But you could see like the shoulders just drop of everybody in the room, like, oh, really? Really? They're all urgent? And he thought he was being a great leader. He's like, look, I'm making everything urgent. I'm moving everything at the same time.
Yeah.
That's not leadership. But that is a form of toxicity that is happening today.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was number 4.
It makes me feel bad for that group.
Yeah. Well,
Feeling a little bit of anxiety right now.
Yeah. I mean, everything we're talking about here today, you're probably experiencing, if you're listening to this, you're probably experiencing this in different doses in your workplace. But if you're feeling it in extreme cases, that's forms of toxicity today in big companies.
Wow. 12 initiatives. Wow.
Yeah. Ready for number 5?
I think so.
Okay, this is our last one.
Okay.
I could go
number
on.
5.
But the last one is probably the easiest sign. All the A players leave. All the A players leave.
Yeah.
All your top talent, people that you really admire and work with and really value their work, they're like, I'm out of here. I'll go somewhere else. I'll even take a pay cut to go somewhere else. And they leave not necessarily for bigger and better things. They may be leaving just for lateral moves, but they're leaving. So when you start to look around, let's say you can't quite diagnose what's going on, but you can tell something's kind of off. Something's not good. You don't feel good going to work. And I have some clients that will tell me, when I go into work, so this is kind of a good sign for all this. So maybe you're trying to put language around it. You know you're probably got a toxic environment, either for everybody or specifically for you and your personality. If you begin to not only dread going to work, but you physically are reacting to the workplace. You're feeling anxious, you're feeling nauseous, you're feeling depressed, whatever it happens to be. Something's going on there. That vibe is not working for you. And so maybe you've got that feeling, but you're not sure what it is. You're looking around, you're noticing all the A players are leaving.
Wow.
That's your first sign. The first thing that's going to happen is the A players will go somewhere else because they can.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants an A player.
Right.
And people know who the A players are. The A players get called every week by recruiters. They get calls all the time. Particularly when they get more established and more senior.
Yeah.
They're getting calls all the time. I have clients all the time that say, yeah, I get calls weekly from recruiters.
Yeah.
But now this one thing has changed at work, and I'm actually thinking I might start taking these calls. And particularly in the talent market today, your A players have got lots of options. So if you're seeing A players leave, that's a sign something's not right. Something's up.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, given all these 5 signs, surely there's something maybe we can do to keep it from tipping over the edge. I don't know.
Save it. Cover it. I didn't expect you to ask me that question.
Oh, Well, okay, right?
How do we recover from this? I think it's a fair point.
Take that you see that, right? That you know that maybe you're the senior leader and your A players are leaving.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a red flag that I got something going on here.
I got a simple diagnosis.
Okay.
It's simple, but it's hard.
Okay.
Clarity and consistency.
Okay.
That's your prescription. So now you may be a VP or a director or something. You have a group. You have control of that, but you can't control the whole thing.
Right. Right.
In a perfect world, senior leadership would have clarity, consistency, and courage. But in big publicly traded companies, I want to be super clear. Not a popular view, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's true. They're lacking a lot of courage. They're scared and they really want to make everyone happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're not willing to tell somebody no. So that creates a lot of the dynamic we've got going on here.
Sure.
But the courage part aside, clarity and consistency is really important. So be really clear on what matters. Be really clear. Be clear on your values. Be clear on where things are going and everyone's roles. And then be consistent. Be consistent on communicating those. Be consistent on living out those yourself. And be consistent on rewarding those things so everybody can see it. Because when you're clear and consistent, it creates calmness. That worked out perfectly. Look at those C's. Look at that. They just happened just like that. But it really does. That clarity and consistency creates calmness. And everything else that we talked about here creates anxiety. And anxiety is one of the worst forms of toxicity because it's this high energy emotion inside you that just eats you up. But clarity and consistency creates calmness, which is a perfect antidote. And you can do that even with your teams right now. And you can do that even at home with your families.
Yeah.
Clarity and consistency. That's going to create calmness. And anyone that has dogs, by the way, because we've had a dog trainer on the show before, anyone that has dogs, by the way, will tell you, clarity and consistency will create calmness in that dog. If you're really inconsistent and not clear, particularly inconsistent, that dog is going to be really an anxious pup. Because dogs in particular really like to know what the routines are, where they stand, how things are going to go, what time is eating time. I mean, Walter will tell us.
Yeah.
He'll show up. He'll be like, hey, it's eating time. And he'll go sit in like on the stairs on the exact same step. And that's his like, I'm waiting for my meal step.
Yeah.
And when he's sitting there, it's like, oh, it's time to feed Walter. And that's when we know. So clarity, consistency. Okay.
Sweet Pea just kicks around the empty bowl.
That's her sign to you.
That's her thing.
Like it's time to fill this up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to recap.
So here we go. Here they are. We've got politics trump performance. That's our number one. Okay. So that's when people are getting rewarded more for their political position than actually this work they're doing. Politics trump performance. Second one is performance trumps values. So we say we're all about team, but we're rewarding this person who's like elbowing people out of the way, hurting people's feelings, having people quit, all that stuff would be an example. Performance trumps values, also a form of toxicity.
So we kind of have P over P and P over V.
Yeah.
That's how I remember it.
Are you trying to do like a mathematical equation?
Well, no, but what is the alliteration?
Yeah.
Would be, yeah. That helps me. I thought maybe it would help. P over P, P over V.
I'm all about that. Leaders' actions don't match their words. So inconsistency. They say one thing, do another thing, or keep changing direction a bunch. I've had that issue where an organization that I've been talking to has that issue. The leader keeps changing direction. Creates a whole bunch of insecurity and anxiety because they don't know what's going on. And remember, in absence of communication, people always assume the worst.
Yeah.
This plays into that too. Number 4, everything is urgent all the time. That's our 12 initiatives thing, right? Everything's urgent all the time.
Yeah.
And the last one, the most easiest basic sign is all the A players leave. They're like, I'm out of here. I can go get something else better or even the same or maybe even a little worse in terms of pay or title. It's better than this place. You start seeing A players exit. That's a bad sign. Okay.
So we've got just a couple of minutes left. We're talking about, this is a series, right? So today was the 5 signs your company culture is toxic. What are the next 2 installments going to be?
You're so good at this. Look at this. You're so good. Like, I just love that. Make my life easier. I don't have to be the one doing that. Gosh, that's so good.
I wish I was that good at
I should have you on
real basketball.
I should have you on every 6 months like this.
And there it was. Okay, you laughed way too long at
I
that.
did. It was so good. Oh, I'm going to enjoy that all day. Okay, so this is a series. So
Yes.
I can tell you the next two, and we'll see how far it goes.
Okay. Okay.
So this was the 5 signs your company culture, big company
Yes.
culture,
Yes.
is toxic. It's kind of highlighting the big publicly traded companies. Okay. The next one's going to be the 5 signs your nonprofit culture is toxic.
Brandon, there's never
Oh, never in a
any
nonprofit.
toxicity in a nonprofit.
So little different flavor. So now we're working in a nonprofit, and what are the signs my nonprofit is toxic? Okay. And then the one after that will be the 5 signs your startup is toxic. Have you ever been part of a startup before, Whitney?
Once.
Once. Once.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about the 5 signs your startup is toxic.
Okay.
And then we'll see where the journey goes from there. Because there's so many different kinds of ways to examine it. We might go even further. But odds are most folks listening to this are going to be in one of those 3 camps.
Yeah.
And then we might go even further beyond that. But I think it's important for people to be able to see the signs so they know kind of how to diagnose what they're seeing and feeling and maybe figure out a path forward. So excellent. Whitney, thank you for coming on with me today.
My pleasure.
Maybe we'll do it every quarter.
Okay, thanks. Well, I know I may be on at least the next 2 of the series.
That's true. This kind of brings you back. It does kind of bring you back.
For Whitney.
Yeah. So thank you for not only listening, but also watching the show. And continue to listen and watch the shows. Continue to follow us, because when you follow us, more people kind of join our tribe. And assuming you're listening to us on iTunes, which why wouldn't you be? Rate and subscribe, because that's how other folks find us. And we expand our tribe and expand our pack. So more and more of us have the tools necessary to fight dysfunction, both at work and the rest of our life. So until our next show, have a great week and an awesome life.